Okay, so you know that feeling. Like
Yeah.
you've got a ton of stuff to do, a mountain of it, and suddenly your brain decides that reorganizing your spice rack alphabetically is the most urgent thing.
Oh, absolutely. We've all been there.
Yeah, and you feel kind of bad, like you're just being lazy. But
Yeah.
what if, putting things off isn't really about laziness? What if it's something else, your brain trying to signal something?
Exactly. And that's what we're going to dive into today. We're looking at Dr. Neil Fiore's book, The Now Habit. And honestly, it's such a refreshing take. It's not about guilt or those like productivity hacks that make you feel worse.
Right.
Fiore really gets into the why behind procrastination and importantly, gives some genuinely useful ways to uh, get moving without that awful feeling of dragging yourself through cement.
And to make it all feel a bit more real, less abstract, we're going to follow someone named Maya. Let's imagine her as a freelance graphic designer. Deadlines, creative blocks, all that fun stuff. Her journey, her struggles, will kind of mirror how these ideas play out in real life.
Yes.
Maybe you'll see some of your own experiences in her story.
Yeah, definitely. And our goal here, it's not just a quick summary. We really want to get under the hood, understand the feelings, the fears, maybe the beliefs that are actually driving that procrastination bus.
Not just another Band-Aid solution.
Exactly. Get to the root cause.
Okay, let's get into it then. So one of the first big ideas from Fiore is that procrastination. It's often not about just wanting to slack off. It's more like a coping mechanism for dealing with anxiety and fear.
Precisely. It's less about being lazy and more like a way to dodge something uncomfortable, almost like a shield your brain puts up.
A shield.
Yeah, think about it. When you're facing something big, maybe something where you might be judged or you worry about failing, your brain can kind of default to these avoidance tactics. It's trying to protect you from feeling bad.
And it's not like you're consciously deciding, okay, time to avoid.
No, not usually. It's often happening just below the surface, which is why it can be so frustrating.
So let's look at Maya. She lands this cool gig, right? Designing cover art for a pretty popular podcast.
Big opportunity.
Huge. And at first, she's super excited. But then, almost instantly, those little worry voices start chiming in.
Oh, yeah. The what ifs.
Totally. What if they hate it? What if my ideas are terrible? What if I just stare at a blank screen?
And that's the trigger. Suddenly, instead of diving in, Maya feels this almost magnetic pull towards, well, anything else.
Right. Her inbox desperately needs cleaning. Her desk needs a full-on decluttering session. She's reading articles about, I don't know, the history of fonts.
Anything but the podcast cover. And Fiore's point is key here. Her brain isn't just being difficult. It's genuinely trying to shield her from the potential sting of failure or criticism tied to that big project.
Those smaller tasks feel safe, doable. You get a little dopamine hit from finishing them.
Exactly. They provide immediate, low-stakes rewards, unlike the scary, uncertain creative project. So it's not a lack of willpower, it's that protective instinct kicking in.
And maybe you, listening, recognize that pattern. When something important or challenging comes up, do you suddenly find yourself needing to sort out your bookshelf or plan your meals for the next month?
That could be it right there. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What feeling am I really trying to avoid here?
Okay, this next part is really interesting too. Fiore talks about how the language we use just in our own heads about our tasks can actually make us resist more.
Oh, this is huge. It's amazing how powerful our internal self-talk is.
Like we're setting ourselves up for a fight before we even start.
Absolutely. Think about the feeling difference between saying, I have to do this, versus I choose to do this.
Big difference.
It sounds small, maybe,
Yeah.
but that shift from obligation to choice, it taps into our need for autonomy, for control, and it can seriously lower that internal resistance.
So back to Maya. She sits down, determined to work on the cover art.
Yeah.
And the first thought is, I have to get this done.
Yep, you can almost feel the tension in that, right? The pressure.
Totally. She feels it physically, mentally. She's already pushing back. It feels heavy.
But then she remembers this idea, this language thing, and she consciously tries to reframe it. Instead of, I have to, she tries, okay, I choose to spend, say, 30 minutes just sketching some initial ideas.
Just 30 minutes. A choice.
And often that feeling of being forced, that heaviness, it starts to lift a little. It's replaced by a sense, even a small one, of agency. I'm deciding to do this small piece right now.
It goes from this burden you're being made to carry to something you're actively picking up, even if it's just for a short walk.
Exactly. Fiore really stresses this. Framing things as choices cuts down on that internal friction, makes taking the first step just that bit easier.
So maybe for you listening, pay attention this week. How often does I have to pop into your head about your tasks? And just experiment. Try switching it to I choose to, even for a small block of time. See if it shifts anything for you. Might be surprised.
It often does.
Okay, now this next one, this might sound a little backwards at first. Fiore calls it the unschedule, and it basically means schedule the fun stuff first.
Yeah. It kind of goes against everything we're usually taught, right? Which is work first.
Yeah.
Then you can maybe have fun if there's time left, if you've earned it.
Right, leisure is the reward you get after the hard work.
But Fiore flips that. He suggests intentionally scheduling your leisure, your enjoyable activities, your downtime, before you even slot in the work tasks.
Okay, hang on. How does that work? Won't you just fill your week with fun and never get to the work?
Well, that's the fascinating part. The idea is that when work feels like this endless obligation that prevents you from ever having guilt-free fun, you resist it more. But if you know you have dedicated, protected time for enjoyment.
Okay. So Maya was definitely in that first camp. She'd be avoiding the illustration, right? But then, if she even thought about watching a movie or meeting a friend, she'd feel super guilty.
Totally. A classic procrastination guilt cycle. Avoid work, feel bad, can't enjoy free time because you feel bad about avoiding work. It's exhausting.
So she tries the unschedule. Instead of saying, I need to block out 8 hours for work, she first puts in her calendar, brunch with Sarah, Saturday 11 a.m., yoga class, Tuesday 6 p.m., movie night Friday.
These become fixed points, non-negotiable appointments with enjoyment, just as important as a client meeting.
And the surprising result.
By giving herself permission to have that fun, by scheduling it in and protecting it, Maya actually found she was more focused and productive during the time she did set aside for work.
Really? How come?
It's like the work didn't feel like this giant monster eating up all potential joy. Knowing she had enjoyable things locked in, things to look forward to, seemed to give her more energy. It made the work feel less like a constant draining obligation and more like just part of a balanced week.
So less resentment towards the work.
Exactly. When joy isn't something you have to constantly earn, but is just a normal, scheduled part of life, it reduces the pressure. It makes the whole system feel more sustainable, less prone to burnout and resistance.
So maybe try it. Intentionally schedule something fun this week, guilt-free. See if it changes the energy around your work tasks.
It's worth experimenting with.
Okay, so we're using kinder language, we're scheduling joy. But sometimes you're still staring at that task and it just feels huge, impossible to even begin. Fiore has an idea for this too, right? Something called persistent starting.
Yes. This is so practical. It's all about shifting the focus away from the overwhelming idea of finishing the entire thing.
Which can be paralyzing.
Totally. Instead, the entire goal becomes just starting. And crucially, making that start ridiculously small, almost laughably easy.
Right. So Maya, thinking about finish the podcast cover, that feels like climbing Everest, like you said. It's just too big, too vague, too scary, instant shutdown.
Avoidance mode activated.
So she tries this shift. Instead of, I need to finish this design, her goal becomes, I just need to start today. And that start could be, what?
Hey.
Like opening the software.
Exactly. Or drawing one single line. Or brainstorming one potential color palette. Or just thinking about one possible concept for 5 minutes. The key is that the starting action feels completely non-threatening. Tiny.
And what happens when you focus only on that tiny start?
It massively lowers the barrier to entry. That initial dread, that resistance you feel when facing the whole mountain, it kind of dissolves because you're only asking yourself to take one tiny step.
And often that one tiny step, it leads to another.
Very often, yes. It's about breaking the inertia. Once you've made that first tiny move, it's much easier to make a second, then a third. You build a little momentum without the crushing weight of having to finish it all now. Progress happens more organically.
So the pressure's off.
The pressure of finishing is off. The focus is purely on initiating, on showing up for that tiny first action.
So if you're facing something big, don't look at the summit. Just look at your feet and ask, what's the absolute smallest possible step I can take right now?
That's the essence of it. Make starting easy.
Okay, but what happens when you do start? Maybe you even make some progress, but then the worry kicks in, the anxiety about the outcome or what people will think. That can shut you down again.
Yes. The inevitable worries. Fiore addresses this too. He doesn't suggest ignoring them, but actually engaging with them proactively. Turning worry into, well, a form of productive work itself.
Doing the work of worrying.
Kind of, yeah. Instead of letting those anxieties spin around in your head and lead you back to avoidance, you tackle them head on.
Okay, give us an example with Maya. Maybe she sent off an initial sketch to the podcast client, and hasn't heard back.
Perfect scenario. Radio silence. And her mind immediately goes to the worst places, right? They hate it. I've wasted my time. They're going to fire me. Panic sets in.
Classic spiral.
So, using Fiore's idea, instead of just letting that spiral paralyze her, Maya could try a specific technique. Maybe she takes out a journal and asks herself point blank, okay, what's the absolute worst that could happen here?
Ooh, scary question.
It can be, but then the crucial follow-up is, and what would I do if that worst thing happened? She actually writes down the potential negative outcome and then brainstorms concrete actions she could take in response.
So, worst case, they hate the sketch and reject it. Then, what I do? Ask for specific feedback. Offer to do a completely new concept based on their notes. Worst case, maybe suggest another designer if it's truly not a fit.
Exactly. By writing it down, defining the fear, and then planning potential responses, the worry starts to feel less like a formless monster and more like a problem with possible solutions.
It makes it manageable, less paralyzing.
Right. It transforms that free-floating anxiety into proactive planning. You've acknowledged the fear, but you've also thought about how you'd cope. It often takes the wind out of the worry sails.
That's a really practical tool. So next time you feel overwhelmed by what-ifs related to a task, try writing it down. Worst case. And what would you do?
It can really help regain a sense of control.
Okay, one last key idea ties a lot of this together. It's about redefining what progress or success even means, and making sure to reward yourself along the way.
Yes, this is crucial for building a healthier relationship with work and overcoming that procrastination cycle long term. It's about shifting focus from perfect outcomes to persistent effort.
So often we only feel good if the final product is amazing or if we get external validation.
Right, and Fiore suggests we need to consciously recognize and reward the act of showing up, the effort we put in, regardless of the immediate result.
So Maya finishes the project, sends off the final files, even before she gets the client's reaction. She needs to acknowledge her work.
Absolutely. She needs to consciously celebrate the fact that she navigated the challenges, she used these techniques, she started persistently, she managed her worries, and she delivered. The effort itself is worthy of reward.
And the reward doesn't have to be huge, right?
Not at all. It could be anything that feels genuinely rewarding to her. Maybe taking a long walk in the park, ordering her favorite sushi for dinner, simply taking a moment to tell herself, hey, you did the thing, you showed up, even when it was hard, well done.
It's about acknowledging the process, not just the final grade.
Precisely. Progress isn't just about flawless finishes. It's about consistently starting, making an effort, learning, and moving forward, even imperfectly. Rewarding that effort reinforces the positive behaviors.
So maybe take a moment to think about how you acknowledge your own efforts. Do you give yourself credit for showing up, for trying? Even if things aren't perfect, it's important.
It really helps build momentum and self-trust.
So looking back at Maya's journey, she really shifted, didn't she, from being frozen by fear and obligation?
Yeah, to someone who learned to choose to start, to prioritize her own well-being by scheduling joy, to focus on tiny, manageable steps.
To face her fears proactively and ultimately to be kinder to herself by rewarding the effort, not just the outcome.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe the key takeaways for you listening are that subtle shift in language from have to choose to.
Scheduling play first, guilt-free, the unschedule.
Focusing on tiny, persistent starting, not the overwhelming finish line.
Having a plan for when worries pop up, acknowledging them, and deciding what you do.
And remembering to reward yourself for showing up and putting in the effort.
And maybe a final thought to leave you with. What if being stuck isn't really about being broken or lazy? What if it's more about needing to unlearn some of those unhelpful pressures we put on ourselves?
And instead just choosing to begin, again and again, like Maya learned to do.
So here's a little challenge, if you're up for it. Pick one thing this week, maybe something you've been putting off, just one, and try that persistent starting idea. Commit to just 5 minutes of starting on it, just 5 minutes. See what happens. You might just surprise yourself.
You really might. Thanks for diving in depth with us today.